Hello, one and all, and welcome back to another thrilling episode of Off the Dome. I'm your humble interviewer, Jordan Brown, and with me for the very first time is our superb cinematographer. Say hi, superb cinematographer.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Kevin. I think I have something very specific that I need to thank you for, and it
Okay.
is these shoes.
Whoa! Oh my God! Wait, that's amazing.
So I think you posted the picture of them, or I
Yeah.
think Sam shared your picture of it, and everyone in my corner of the internet was like, the Dropout store is about to launch a line of shoes. Those are clearly game changer shoes.
Mm-hmm.
And then some people did some sleuthing and discovered they're just a pair of Brooks.
Just a
What
pair of
was what was Sam's reaction when he saw those for the first time?
It's okay. I want to tell the story about these shoes because it's actually stupendous. It's my favorite thing ever. So, I am dating this wonderful woman named Jess, and we've been together for many years. And for a good chunk of that time, we were doing long distance because she was working at a hospital in Houston. And during that time, literally anytime she'd catch a break, she would fly to LA and spend time with me. And during one of those times that she was here, she kept pushing her flight and literally delaying her going back to work for several days in a row. And she was just like, I just want to spend more time with you. And like, we only got a few days here. So let me just try to get more days. And usually she doesn't try to do that. Like, she's also loyal to her job. And so like I could tell, I was like, something's going on. And she was clearly anticipating something. And then one day the doorbell rang and she ran to the door, flung it open, and there's a box. It's like the size of a shoebox. And she was trembling. She was shaking. And she's like, the reason that I extended my flight and called off work is in this box. She's like, I wanted to see your reaction to these. And so I was like, all right, this is a big deal. It's clearly bigger than an engagement ring, so it's not that. And I open up the box and I see the shoes, and I'm like, the first thing that went through my mind was like, I didn't know Brooks had a like design your own shoe
Yeah.
feature. I was like, that is so cool and so thoughtful. And of course, I was just like, thank you so much. This is the most personal gift I've ever received. And then she's like, it's not, I didn't make it. It's not custom. That's a shoe you can buy right now. And my jaw smashed through the floor. And she, of course, showed me the website and where you could buy it. And I was like, okay, the only way to properly show anyone that I have these shoes is to post it the next time we're setting up Game Changer. Like, it's the most prime way to wear these shoes for the first time. And I waited 6 to 8 months to wear those shoes, and boy, was it worth it. Sam and of course the whole crew reacted with loud noises, and some crew members did buy them. I think maybe Justin, the producer, bought a pair. I don't think Sam has bought a pair. Missed opportunity.
Yeah, real missed opportunity, Sam. Come on.
And Chloe, of course, was so stoked. And no one knows if it's intentional or it's like one of those things where like a musician writes a song without realizing that they've been influenced by something. Like truly, no one has any idea if this is an accident, it's influenced, it's unintentional bias, whatever. It's just this incredible, happy, marvelous thing that exists. And they're always within 20 feet of me. So right now my shoes are just over there.
Yeah, oh man, that's so delightful. Every bit of that is delightful. Yeah, like I said, when I saw them, and I was like, oh my God, they've got game changer shoes. And then, like I said, a friend, Mish, sent me like the link of like, they're just straight up shoes you can buy. And we were like, wait, what?
Yeah.
And then so to explain like how weird my life has gotten, then I just begged strangers to send me money so I could buy them, and they did. And so then I bought them because like I didn't need a new pair of shoes, and my wife was like, you can't buy $120 pair of shoes.
Like, it's gift
for level. A bit. Yeah. Like
for sure. Yeah.
But I wear them all the time now. They're so comfortable.
Yeah.
Okay, so Brooks, if you're watching, send me more shoes.
Brooks is okay. Number one, Brooks is the best shoe, hands down. They are. So I actually wear Brooks on set every day when I go to Dropout, because like I literally can stand for 12 hours if I wear their shoes. I am not sponsored by Brooks. but I have worked on Brooks shoots before, and I've interfaced with Brooks clients, and like the people that like flew. I think they're headquartered in Washington, and like I was hanging out with like their PR people and their team, and they are also very nice and
Oh,
some of the best
good.
clients I've ever interfaced with. So I don't get paid any money to say that, but I am happy to toss them all of my words of affirmation. They are actually amazing. And that ends today's sponsored segment.
I also get tons of compliments on them. Most compliments I've ever gotten for a shoe.
It's really nice.
Yeah. But yeah, so wild that that design is so similar.
It's the best. I'm
Yeah,
stoked that you have those shoes. Congratulations. You're
thank
part of
you.
an interesting club now.
Yeah, it's. I wonder. I'm really curious if after you posted the picture, like the 6 to 8 months later, or after you bought them, if they saw the noticeable spike in that specific design, and they're like, "What's going on? Like,
You're like,
what a
oh wow,
weird."
there are 6 more sales today than average. That is very interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of this really specific design.
Yeah.
That's delightful. Oh man, this whole thing was worth it just for that story. But there's so much more.
Sure, sure.
I know also one of the very cool things that you shared was the letter that you got to be like, "Hey, Dropout is going to do profit sharing
Yep.
this year because we had a good year." Can you talk about how wildly different that is than not to mention any names, but most experiences that you would have ever? And not like, yeah.
I have worked for a lot of big media companies. And if you Google my name enough, you'd be able to figure out probably what those are. Never in my entire career has it ever happened. Um, and I am in an incredibly fortunate position where I get to hire a lot of professionals and experts under me, gaffers, key grips, cam ops, very talented individuals that all work in Hollywood. I had so many of those people message me directly out of shock, and unanimously, no one I know that I have ever worked with in or around Hollywood has ever seen anything like it. It is unheard of. Dropout is, as far as I'm aware, the only like internet based, social media based company to ever do anything like that. Honestly, I bet you they are the only company in like the history of Hollywood, in the whole scope of Hollywood, to ever do that to the degree that Dropout did it. Because we're not talking about them profit sharing with employees. I am a freelancer. I am contractually hired by Dropout. I do not work full time for them. The camera operators that I hire, the gaffers that I hire, none of them are full time staff. We'll show up for 2 weeks and then we'll go home. And Dropout profit shared with every single one of those individuals, including I hired someone for a single 6 hour day, and that person was profit shared. And it, I don't, for the sake of, I don't like want to become weirdly political, but I will comfortably say like it was not measly money. It was significant enough to be like, that amount of money is enough to actually change your career and help you be like, oh, I can now suddenly afford that tool that I was always putting off buying because it's just a little bit too expensive. It's like it was enough money to be like, this actually really helps benefit me, rather than be like, oh, cool, I can go buy an extra Chick-fil-A today.
Yeah.
So it's noteworthy, so mentionable, so impressive. And I don't know the exact person that was like, we should do this, but it's obviously Sam Reich, um, David Kearns, Kyle Rohrbach, somewhere in that circle of people are to thank for that decision. And it's unbelievable. I texted all of them and I was just like, this is the best thing that has ever happened in my whole career. It's incredible.
Yeah, that's astonishing. Yeah, I I remember, when I think it was the 5 year anniversary video came out, so there was an interview with Sam where he was talking about like the potential residuals for cast and crew, which I was like, oh man, that's so cool. But it sounded like and obviously wasn't residuals, but I was like, this sounds like like, we're going to try this like in a couple of years after. And like, there was a mention of like profit sharing. I was like, that sounds like maybe next year they'll try it, but nope, just like right out the gate, like, we had a great year, let's go, which is just astonishing.
And from my perspective, thinking of like, I can look at the money they gave me and think to myself, okay, if they gave me this, this is probably what they also gave a bunch of other people. And also, as me interfacing just like with their studio and with their infrastructure. For instance, we're using all of Dropout shows use cameras that are almost 10 years old at this point. Easily, they could have been like, look, we're about to send all this money to crew, but why not refocus our priority and spend it on upgrading our equipment? We're using equipment that's a decade old. They didn't. They invested in people, which is like, name one company that has ever done that. I can't.
Right.
I truly can't.
Yeah. And I mean, I think, I thought about this when, like, in that Sam interview where he talked about, holding on to talent is so important. And, my first thought, of course, was someone like Brennan, who is such a like huge explosion name that he's gonna, I don't know about get offers, but like, he could go pick his price to do something somewhere else probably. And so if you're going to be like, okay, well, here's how much we value you. And although Brennan obviously would tell you capitalism is the bad guy, like, it is still the society we live in.
Sure.
And he got a new baby he's got to pay for. So
Sure.
I just blown away. And it was one of those things where, like, I had already started doing this series of interviews with like a bunch of the Bros End folks. And so when you and like, you follow me on TikTok, you know what my brand is there. It's all I talk about. And so when like that happened, I was like, oh, thank goodness. Like, I'm correct in my profuse love for them.
You are. Yeah, you're spot on. And also, like, everyone loves you. Like, when I was messaging like Andrew and everyone about, like, I was like, oh, I was hit up to do this interview, and Andrew is like, oh, Jordan is good people. Like, we love his videos, and we love the fact that you're enthusiastic and sharing that, and so that more people can be aware of it. It's great. And like, yeah, whenever you made the video about the profit sharing thing, I was like, that was my goal when I posted that on social media. I was like, I need everyone to see what Dropout just did.
Yeah.
So thank you.
I'll tell you, that video did really, really solid numbers for me as well. TikTok got real mad about it, which, whatever. I don't know.
Why?
I think so if I have a video that's over a minute, it's monetized, and TikTok demonetized that video because they claimed it was low level or like low quality work. I think it's because I had like your letter up on green screen and I read parts of it. It's the first time it's ever happened to me that they're like, hey, you didn't try hard enough on this one. And so like, I like challenged it, and they took that back. And they're like, okay, fine, you can get paid for this video. But it was like a quarter of what I normally make on a video. And I was like, all right, you guys were real mad about this one, but okay. I don't understand anything how TikTok works. It's truly a wild platform.
It's a black box, and we'll probably never know.
I made a video. I'm not ever. The goal is never like, I want to make a huge profit on my videos, but it is weird when you're like, oh, I think like, like that, because those are usually like, hey, I could buy an extra like chicken sandwich today or whatever. Like, that's a nice little perk. And they're like, no. But in exciting news, I made a video about women who should divorce their husbands this week, and it's going to make like $500, and I'm putting all that money to Doctors Without Borders. So it's a good week for me on TikTok.
Thank you for doing that.
Yeah, I do rage bait videos for charity because I realized I made a ragey video where I yelled about the Roman Empire, and it made so much money, and I was like, oh no. All I would have to do on my channel is just like yell at a camera, and people, and I would just be like raking in money. And I was like, what a nightmare my life would be. So now I only use that power for good.
Isn't there like a trend right now where it's like girls ask your guy how often he thinks of the Roman Empire?
Yeah, it was that. So I made a video where I was like, I don't think about it. And a bunch of people got in my comments and called me a cuck. And I was like, what is happening? And so then I was like, all right, this is a white supremacy thing. I'm going to scream about it on the internet. And then it blew up.
That's awesome. I love it.
Um, but back to more important things. So you are a cinematographer and a director of photography. What is the difference between those two things?
It's a good question. They're the same thing. I
Okay.
don't know if on one project in the credits it said director of photography, on the other one it said cinematographer. It's identical. It's also comes down to preference a little bit. The word cinematographer has certain Latin roots that make it more fancy and cool sounding. Cine meaning like it's from the root kine, Kine, which means to move, and graph meaning to write. I don't know. I'm probably fucking that up in some way, but anyways, they're the same thing. It's the same. It does. There's no difference.
It's very well. Look, we're learning stuff today.
Yeah.
Um, so I know you've worked on obviously Dimension 20, and I want to get very in the weeds with you on that. But before we get there, you've also done Game Changer and Make Some Noise, as well as obviously like a slew of other projects outside of Dropout. I'm curious, sort of like, well, first how you came to Dropout, if it was just like a, like applied for a job, got in the door, or if like you knew people that brought you along.
Totally. I so let me think a good starting point here, or also just like a way to make it simple. But um, Dropout used to be Game Changer Dropout used to be College Humor.
Yeah.
And College Humor was very regularly hiring lots of freelancers. When they had like a completely different office, they were making scripted content, and then they were like, "Let's try this unscripted thing." And the very first project that I ever did with them was season 1 of Game Changer, and I was a camera operator on it. And that was truly like the most delightful experience. Of course, like every day after set, my mouth would hurt from laughing. And I just knew like anytime that I would ever get hit up for a job from College Humor, it was going to be a yes, no matter what. I would drop anything else to do it. And I got to do season 2 as a camera operator as well. Dyron Pacheco was the DP on those 2 shows, and Dyron is a impeccable, wonderful cinematographer. Dyron is also off doing wonderful, enormous, big projects, and works on all sorts of stuff in Hollywood. But anyways, I was able to freelance and do a lot of different things at College Humor. And then pandemic occurs and everything changes. And the pandemic stacked with College Humor's complete restructuring and firing due to the IAC change in management, and Sam Reich purchased the College Humor brand. And everything sort of like fizzled and died off, and I didn't hear from them for a while until, and this is a little bit how Hollywood works, is that just completely adjacently, I have also freelanced and worked with this guy named Jake Michaels, who is very big in the tabletop world. Jake Michaels does a lot of board game content and is Becca Scott's director. Becca Scott and Jake are they are like the duo when it comes to like the indie game tabletop.
I've heard Becca yell at him off camera for his directing notes.
Absolutely. And during the pandemic, it was possible for Becca to continue to shoot her content because it was so small and the risk of COVID was much more diminished. And so Jake brought me on to shoot a lot of Becca's tabletop held to game videos. And Becca is also just a wonderful, incredible human. And she introduced me to David Kearns because I'm shooting in Becca's house in her living room every day. It's not literally every day back to back, but it was a lot. And I was like rummaging through their gear, and I was just like, "Hey, David, like, I know that maybe you don't need this or you didn't ask for it, but like, if you want me to like come and like organize your gear, I find it very satisfying to like sort things. And there's this needs to be sorted. Like, it kind of looks like someone threw a grenade at a pile of equipment and just left it how it went off." And David was incredibly thankful, and I did go and sort all of their equipment, which was just stacked in a glorified garage at the time. And by doing that, David was like, we're gonna try shooting a few things to like kind of re-energize College Humor if you want to come and help and shoot that. And I did. I shot a couple of things over, and they had like a really small stage at that time. And it became this cascading event of like, thank you for shooting this thing. Do you want to shoot the next thing? And thank you for doing that. You can do this. And establishing a rapport with the folks that were there. And at that time, it was David Kearns, Matt LaForest, Rommel, and then maybe a few folks on the back end, but that was it. That was all of College Humor. And this is like 2020. So to see what has happened between then and now is monumental. It's crazy. It is truly like it's a once in a lifetime ever. It's uncommon. It's rare. It does not occur in many places. And I wake up every day thanking my lucky stars. It is a blessing to be along for that ride. And every time they call me back to work on another shoot, it's just like this, like, it's like striking while the iron's hot. I'm like, hell yes, let's go. It's the best feeling. And yeah, all I can say is just like eternal gratitude that I get to be along for that ride. And I'm very happy that I've gotten to play a role in that growth. It makes me feel very, very satisfied, very complete. Like I was able to help them become what they are today.
Yeah, I mean, that's super cool. Yeah, I would love to, like, what you have seen, that like part of that growth, that change of, I mean, even like 2020 to now, of, in terms of, I mean, Dimension 20 and Game Changer, like how huge those productions have grown. I mean, I know, like, we're getting another season of Game Changer, and we don't have a lot of details, but I know Sam has called it the most ambitious season yet. And you know that obviously junior year, wildly ambitious. There's a new permanent dome. There are 70 people working behind the scenes. Like it's a different ball game. What has that been like? What have you seen in terms of like changes?
Well, they're all changes that are, I think, always in the right direction of like, how do you scale up but do it properly? And that's where a lot of media companies get it wrong. And I think that it's largely because the people that are making the choices of how to scale have been in the industry long enough to see like what works and what doesn't work. And so they listen to a lot of feedback from their crew, and they take suggestions, they take ideas. They literally have, when we shoot shows, we have pieces of paper up in multiple areas that says, if you have a suggestion, scan the QR code and comment here, or just come up to us and talk to us. They actually listen. They really care. They take suggestions. And I remember there was when we did Dirty Laundry, I think maybe the first season, I admittingly bit off more than I could chew by not hiring enough crew members. I didn't really advocate enough for myself as to getting the support I needed. And so I was just wearing multiple hats on set, and I was just like running back and forth and like setting up this light, setting up this camera, blah, blah, blah. And David recognized that. And when the shoot was over, he came up to me and he actually said, "Hey, I just want you to know, like, I see that you are working your butt off. And if you ever feel like you're not taken care of, just know I have your back and you can talk to me about anything." And I've never forgotten that, because again, there's no company that I've ever worked for that has said or done that. And so what is it like? It's like working with people that listen, and it's great.
Yeah, I a brief stint working as a production assistant in LA. And one time a producer told me, I was his assistant, and he told me, shit rolls downhill and it stops at me or you. And I was like, cool, man, cool. And that was because someone who had flown in from New York ignored his car service and thought, like, I can just catch a cab like it's New York. And so when he didn't show up for his car service, it got canceled. So he didn't show up to the script read the next morning because because the whole service had been canceled. And that was my fault.
On behalf of Hollywood, I'm sorry, but
yeah,
I'm sorry. Yeah, it just sucks. And like, a lot of people don't realize that PAs can get tasked with sometimes the hardest work on set, and it's a shame. And also, that's another thing I think Dropout recognizes, that they pay their PAs. The PA rates are actually pretty decent, at least higher than what most other places were, because a lot of people just match hourly rate, but Dropout has always gone a little notch above that. And they get enough PAs that it's not like they're asking one PA to be like, oh, drive to like 5 different places in Hollywood, and then as soon as you get here, you're also going to join the grip and electric team and rig some lights. Like, it's like, that doesn't happen. They don't ask PAs to do stuff that's not in the scope of what a normal PA does.
Yeah. I'll share one more story now, because I have to. I was working on a film that was shooting in Phoenix, and I was based in LA. And there periodically, they would think that they were going to run out of film, like actual like spools of film. And so I would have to drive from Universal Studios to like some film place downtown, and then to LAX to get it on a flight.
Wow.
To like go out. Maybe we flew it out of Burbank. We might have flown it out of Burbank. Doesn't matter. It was not an easy, like, it was my afternoon. And when they came back and I was helping unload the truck and I saw how many unused spools of film, I had a full meltdown of like, do you know how many days I wasted like spending thousands of dollars to like on the next flight out to the Phoenix airport, and you had plenty.
Yeah.
Thankfully, the people that were around at that point like fully were like, look, we knew you were going to lose your mind when you saw this, because they were like co-workers, not management.
The unfortunate thing, that something I always think about, is that the film industry can be very wasteful, and collectively everyone is trying to like mitigate that, but boy oh boy is it a tough one, in so many different ways, as you said, like with film, with reels of film, with water bottles. It's like, yeah, the film industry can unfortunately be pretty wasteful, and it doesn't feel great to be a part of that, but it's one of those things where it's like everyone has to do a collective part to like make that better, and that's tough to convince collective people to do things for the betterment of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, you definitely experienced that 100%. I can only imagine, truly.
Yeah. Oh, but now I get to do this, and everything's fine. And the bonus is, I have a small amount of like a peek of what like film sets are like, so that it makes my interviews, I think, a little bit better.
Yeah.
We'll see. So, you're now DP on Game Changer. Does that mean? I assume that you were for that season that had Escape the Green Room, the last season. So you were supervising the madness. What was that shoot like? And how is the camera operator doing? Who Lulu Wilson screamed at, "You will be remembered."
Okay. Yeah, that was great. That was Sophie, who like I love just being like, let's make you TikTok famous now, because Sophie is a wonderful cam op and she's very cool. This requires some nuance, because there was a really interesting element of this season of Game Changer, which is untraditional and I will never do again for the rest of my life, which is I broke the season into two different DPs, myself being one, and then a colleague of mine named Graham Sheldon, I made the other DP. And the reason for this is that I thought I could have my cake and eat it too. I got a different job offer to film this other YouTuber that I work with frequently. Her name is Michelle Carre, and she wanted to fly me to Amsterdam to film her experiencing what it's like to go to Butler Academy, which has been a video that they have wanted to make for years, and they finally got the okay to do it. So selfishly, I was like, well, I want to do Game Changer, and I also want to travel to the Netherlands. And so the Netherlands shoot happens on the second half of the Game Changer season. So I'm like, here's what I'm going to do. Sam Reich, if you will allow me, I will set up the whole show and it will run perfectly smoothly. I'm going to baton pass to my colleague Graham Sheldon, smack in the middle, and I'm hiring him as a cam op in the first half so that he sees the whole show as it's happening, and he will just take the lead and everything will run smoothly. And Sam Reich, thank God, was cool with this. He's like, yeah, no problem. And after he said, yeah, no problem, I was just like, well, I now have to accomplish something very hard, which is to set up the green room episode, understand the mechanics of it, how people are going to interact with it, how we're going to cover it, shoot it, light it, and technologically route and feed all of those cameras to a main like central processing unit, and then teach someone how to do that. And that was hard, but you know what? It actually worked very well. And a lot of that is to thank because of Graham. Like most DPs would not be cool doing that. Just being like, I don't want to touch that with a 10-foot stick, because everyone wants to be set up for success. But I had a lot of, I like made manuals. I had calls, text messages with Graham, and Graham was really receptive and learned all of it. So thank God for Graham. And that's what happened. I was actually, I mean, maybe it was like 5 in the morning or something, and I got a call or a text from Justin, and Justin just says, "Worked out great, thanks." And that was the best text message I've ever received in my whole life because I
I
was
bet.
I was very afraid. I was like, no one knows how this shoot's gonna go. I did, of course, decompress and like actually hear the play by play later, but it did go pretty swimmingly well. Like we locked him in there, the cameras were rolling, and at that point we had all talked about and rehearsed what does this day look like, when do the cameras start rolling, when does Sam go in there, when does the TV turn off, when does the TV turn on. um, every moving part had been so well orchestrated and rehearsed that fortunately, it's almost theatrical. Like you have your dress rehearsals. And so that went well. And thank God to that, and thank God to the whole team that pulled it off. Um, but it was an endeavor. It's truly like if it weren't already hard to shoot something like that, I definitely didn't make it easier by leaving the set and making someone else do it. But it was all handled incredibly well. And from what I've heard, the day was unbelievably crazy. And the most important thing is I hope Sophie, our camera operator, will always be remembered
You
for
will be remembered. Yeah. Oh, an incredible moment.
yeah,
Yeah, oh man. Well, I think like speaks to someone who, for fun, enjoys organizing camera equipment.
right,
Can be the person to be like, I'm going to make a manual to let you know, like, this is how we built this and this is how it works.
yep.
But yeah, that's wild.
It was hard.
Yeah. I'm curious. And like I know you're working on Make Some Noise as well, and sort of like both Game Changer and Make Some Noise. Well, I guess you're sort of the chaos of Game Changer, how you sort of adapt to that. And I in my notes I've written the Vic of Make Some Noise, which is Vic is going to wander around the set, and I know like obviously camera operators are trained to like follow, but like Vic might be an inch from the camera by the time they finish a prompt. Like, how does that impact your role in terms of like trying to set all of that up?
Totally. What's funny? I wish I could show you. I might just send you this screenshot. I literally sent a message on the Make Some Noise Slack channel yesterday or 2 days ago, and I just said, Um, you know, should it is it does anyone think it's worth it for me to just have a camera literally right next to me? So as I'm watching Video Village, if I see talent doing something that is going to majorly screw with coverage, I have this extra camera and I can just go run in. And everyone was just like, yeah, yeah, that makes sense. It's actually kind of freeing and energizing to know that we have no idea what's going to happen on set. And I tell all camera operators that on the day. I'm like, to the everyone, all camera operators sort of get a general assignment. It's like, this is your person, follow this person. This is your person, follow them. When they come together, then the cameras cross shoot each other. And I communicate that with everyone on the fly live. But there's going to be things that we can't predict. And I just tell camera operators, I'm like, do your best. Because that's all you can really do is do your best with unscripted stuff. And myself included, if I see something that my camera operators physically cannot get, I just go run in and I figure out how to capture it. And so that's kind of a delightful, fun part of this job is every day is different and we don't know what kind of challenges we're going to face.
Yeah, I assume that's very similar in the terms of like in the same sort of like scripted versus improv, trying to set that up of like no one's hitting a mark because they don't have marks to hit. Like
Totally.
it's wherever it's going to be. Yeah, I will say one of the things that is, I mean, because having like getting that like camera operator struggling to track someone's shot is always very funny because like as the audience we get to be like, oh yeah, no one knew this was going to happen.
Mhm. Yeah.
And it feels like we're in on the joke even more so than the joke itself. I also adore when we get like a moment of like you can hear all of the crew laughing, of just like, nope, this like it's professional comedians and they're going at it all day, but like this one broke the crew. Do you have any off like the top of your head that like really got you, that you can
Absolutely.
share obviously?
Absolutely. I mean, it's not even from the latest season of Game Changer. When Brendan had his monologue about the game being rigged against him on
Mhm.
yes or no, I was laughing so hard. I literally took my hands off the camera because I was ruining the shot. I actually physically could not operate that camera. And it was that shoot day was also concurrently my birthday, and I was considering not going to work because I was like, oh, you know what? I should treat myself and not. And it was the best birthday I have ever had because I know some commenters out there are convinced that that was scripted. It was not scripted. He had no idea, and that monologue is real. And I will uphold until the day I die is the best piece of improv that will ever exist on the internet.
Yeah. I mean, look, I've consumed enough Brennan media to know that that man can like snap into a monologue with no notes, which is I don't understand how his brain works, but yeah, what an incredible moment. Oh, that's delightful.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of Brennan, Dimension 20. Obviously, like shooting the cast is probably pretty easy. I know they get up sometimes, but it's pretty rare that anyone is getting up at the table. But you're also there for the mini shoots, which obviously are much more intricate. I guess, first of all, like any fun stories of in the dome, and then we can get into like mini shoots. Or we can dive into mini shoots as well, because
I'll ponder on it for a second. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure there is some. You know what? There is one that I told like somewhere in a side adventuring party, but it's a very humbling story that I actually enjoy sharing because it really taught me something. So when Abria came in to the show and just loves to come in and just be like, let's try this thing visually that has never been done before, which leads to a bunch of creatives scratching our heads, being like, well, all right, I guess we'll figure that out now. Abria wanted to experiment with like silhouettes or shadows and the dome wall. And actually, hold on, I'm trying to remember. That was Abria season, right? Where it was
that was Misfits and Magic. Yes.
Okay, just confirming, because there is certain extent where like if I go far back enough, it starts to blend a little bit. Thank you for reconfirming that.
Mhm.
So we were experimenting with the shadow on the dome wall, and we were talking about, it was like one of our first pre-pro meetings, and we were thinking like, how in the world do we get like a character to appear behind the dome and make it look natural? And Shabak mentioned that it used to be a mistake when like a crew member would get up and walk to the bathroom, there would be like a light on in a nearby hallway. And if that crew member didn't walk in the correct path, their shadow was cast on the plexiglass of the dome walls. And that was a mistake. And they'd have to like cut for a second and be like, hey, hold on, take it back 10 seconds. And then we would start shooting back up again. And Shabak is like, what if we just enshrine that and like emphasize that and then shine like a bright light into the dome wall that's on a dimmer, and then we dress up a crew member in a spooky outfit and play with that. And it worked so well. It worked miraculously. And that triggered a light bulb moment for people, which was that if you can project light against the dome walls to create shadow, you can project anything and make whatever you want. And that leveled up to be the snow effect. And this is the part that I specifically love to tell because of how humbling it is. We were in a production meeting. Abria comes in. She's like, I want snow. And of course, we all started thinking about, okay, well, what if we have 3 PAs and they have like giant trash cans, and they're like slowly, shoveling snow over the dome walls? That'd be cool. We've never done that. And then we think about logistically, it's like, well, how do we infinitely refill the trash cans? And like at some point it's going to be this huge mess, and then the cleanup time and whatever. And then our producer, who was Ash Minnick for that season, she goes, what about those like $20 cheap Christmas projector globe lights that you can shoot on a house during Christmas and it makes pretty snowflakes? And man, this is my favorite one of my favorite moments of my career, because in that production meeting, I totally poo-pooed that. I was like, honestly, Ash, like, bring it, let's try it, but we should come up with backup plans because I highly doubt that's going to work. I just can't see, like, when you project like a sharp image through plexiglass that's frosted, I think it's just going to look like this out of focus blob. and she brought it and she set it up herself. She like made like a sandbag and she stuck it on the sandbag and ran the cable to it, and she turned it on, and holy cow, it worked so well. And I love being humbled by that memory because it, I think, is an important lesson that you shouldn't always just like totally shoot something down, even if you have even an inkling of like, well, it might work, it's worth trying, because that changed D20 forever after that. And of course, then it became like, all right, now I'll take over and be like, all right, how do we figure out the projectors and the routing and the video and like implementing out the lighting? And that was a little more my domain, which I was very eager and happy to do. But that is sort of my fun story of the dome, and how like sometimes like ingenuity and like advancement requires tinkering and being open-minded and being humbled. And yeah, it's an amazing thing what that did for the show.
Yeah, I mean, now we have like the incredible projections. We have the moments in like Mentopolis where like we've got the lighting up above that's creating the like blinds look across Brennan. Like really incredible moments of all of, like that stuff that you can do now. That's really cool that it came from what if we plugged in a Christmas light,
Yeah, and
as well as what if we
show.
dressed up someone and put a spotlight on them behind the dome.
Totally, yeah.
I know, like I said, I know you've been involved in the mini shoots for a while now, and I would love, first of all, for you to get as technical as you want to, but like a shot like, like a, I mean, I don't even know, is it a crane shot when the camera's that small still, swooping inside of like a hole in a bear? Like, how do you achieve that kind of thing?
Totally. This was also a very fun thought experiment that took me a really long time to figure out. When I first came into D20, so minis had already been shot. I was not the first to ever do minis for D20. That was, unfortunately, I don't know the name of the first ever DP. But then after that DP was Santiago Bati, who also shoots Play It By Ear. And Santi came up with the idea of using this Osmo camera. So it was like a consumer level DJI Osmo that he made some custom cables for. And we were able to rig that in a crazy way to some pipes, to a tripod head, to a camera slider. And that allowed that freedom of like, let's get in there and capture the minis. And the unfortunate thing about that rig is that, number one, DJI stopped making it and they never made anything better than it. So that camera, that module, was the only one in existence. And it was sort of a ticking time bomb of like, how long can this thing last? And as then the baton got passed to me and I started shooting more of the minis, I was starting to see the rig sort of degrade a little bit. And so like the motors of the rig were starting to get a little choppier, or if I told it to pull focus, it would take a second and then move. And then it was just like, okay, something needs to be figured out. And I spent, I think, maybe a full year drafting ideas and designs, and just pondering, like Googling late nights, like what is the exact perfect piece of equipment to combine with this perfect piece of equipment to make this rig work that is robust and has more longevity than a consumer tool. And finally arrived at what is still an amalgamation of, it's a camera slider with a jib on it, and then at the end of a jib is a gimbal, and at the end of a gimbal is a camera, and on that camera is a probe lens. And when you put all that together, you get the shots that you see with the minis. But it's using elements and tools that are more readily replaceable, accessible, found in Hollywood, where it's like, if I just need to like be like, oh, this thing broke. Oh, well, that's a tool that we use every day. So let's just go get that. The rig still has like some niche, nuanced, custom machined parts, but these are all parts that can now officially like kind of be replaced and refurnished. And so that gives the minis at least more years to shine. And hopefully the idea is maybe in 5 years, once this rig is now made of parts that are harder to find, in 5 years, there's going to be a new amalgamation of tools to accomplish this. But for now, to answer that was a really long way of answering the question of what is it? Yeah, it's a contraption. It's a bunch of weird pieces that are tinkered together that allow us to dolly, jib, pull focus, get into very tight places. I mean, I'm talking about like the camera can officially be like, if this is the lens of the camera, which the lens is about this big now, you can get about that close to a miniature and pull focus on it, which is very hard to do with a traditional camera. And we can get in any configuration of spots and nooks and crannies. And that also then can be sent down. Like I can confidently tell Rick now, like, hey, Rick, you don't have to worry as much about making all these things like breakaway and configurable and like bigger or smaller. Like you can actually kind of do your own thing and I'll fit the camera around you. And Rick still does a fair amount of modularity to the sets that do help. But like in the past, there was literally shots that would be impossible. Like Shabak would be like, "Can we get a shot of this mini in this corner right now?" And it'd be like, "No, I literally can't fit there." And now we do have that ability, and it's because the lens that we use has the ability to either probe down and then at an angle, or it can probe inwards, and so we can change that probe depending on the shot that Shabak wants.
Yeah, that's super cool. Yeah, I've talked to both Raven and KC, who obviously are like back there running mini shoots as well, sort of in the practical sense of like, I know KC was very proud that they had put like pencils in Fabian's motorcycle to drive it in that first battle. And I was emailing with them like, did that shot make it in? That's my favorite shot I've ever done. And when I was talking to KC, I talked to her about like the specifics, and they were basically like, yeah, I don't know, you're gonna have to ask Kevin. I don't he's got some crazy thing hooked up. And so
it's crazy. Yeah,
yeah,
it's a weird creature. I should figure out a name for it or something. But
yes.
I feel like it's so novel that I almost like want to share it with the world and be like, guys, I think I found like maybe a thing that could be used in way many other applications, like jewelry, action figures. It could be extrapolated and used in many other ways. And I don't think it has, and that's fine. Like it doesn't need to. I'm very happy that like this amalgamation was born and continues to be used for D20. But man, it's one hell of a rig. It's so versatile. And it's also remote controllable too. So like as I'm operating it, I move the jib with one arm and then I use the other hand to remotely control the camera. And it's just so versatile and very fun. Hey, I got a little thumbs up from River. That's funny. It's just
I didn't know it did that.
do a thumbs down. It's the reason I used to go from being like the mini shoot was kind of a drag because the tool that we had, which by no fault of anyone's, it just wasn't cooperating in a way that a professional would want a tool to cooperate, which means Shabak wants 200 shots. I need to give him 200 shots. And if a tool is preventing me from doing that, I get frustrated. And so now the tool is actually like very fun because Shabak can yell off any shot he wants. And I'll just be like, boom, 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 get it. And what used to happen is Shabak would be watching the shot with me and making sure that the camera worked because I wasn't always able to even watch the video feed because I had to be so focused on the technology working. And now Shabak trusts the process so much that he's not even watching the shot anymore. He's moving on to the next shot. And we just literally go boom, 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 boom. And by the end of the day, now we can get so many more shots than we used to be able to do.
Yeah, I mean, the Stiller rig has a really nice ring to it.
But what that would do to my ego.
Yeah, that's super cool. Yeah, I know. I mean, one of the things that everyone loves about Dimension 20, and obviously, like you said, it's been sort of a, it's been there the whole time. To quote Sam, but like the mini, like a close-ups of the minis. But yeah, I think noticeably we have seen like that improvement over the years to the point of, I mean, I know. And I talked to Casey about it because everyone has talked to Casey about it, the Pinocchio running shot, and how much everyone loved like the chunkiness of it. And I think they said it was Shabak who was like, no, make it like chunkier. And like,
yes. Casey is such a professional and they want to make it look perfect, of course, because that's their work. but Shabak knows the audience, and Shabak knows, the audience loves that handcrafted touch,
Mhm.
and I totally get it. It's when you combine Casey's work ethic with wanting everything to look great, and Shabak pumping the brakes of knowing exactly how to do that dance of like, oh, you're like, keep trying, keep trying, keep trying, right there. That's the sweet spot. Don't go beyond that because we're getting diminishing returns. You want this, where it's like, it's the fans see that you care and you love what you're doing, but no one's trying to win an Oscar. We want the fans to love the show, and it doesn't need to win best puppetry at the Oscars. Like
Yeah.
it has such a, when you have that touch, the human touch of it, it grounds it and brings it back to earth and makes the fans feel connected to the show.
Yeah. I mean, I think like I think one of the things that feels really special, because this makes sense to me, because I've talked about this a bit, that like one of the things that makes Dimension 20 feel really special is, as an audience, we're discovering the story at the same time that the players are, because it's all improvised, and like we get to see them build that story together. And while they did it, 8 months ago or whatever, like we're seeing it the same way that they're seeing it. And I think it contributes to a lot of the parasocial relationships around the show, of like you feel like you're a part of it. But I think the mini shoots also add a lot to that, of it, like you said, it has that human touch to it, of like, yeah, I can see that like someone is holding the spell effect and like pushing it towards the camera or whatever, or the camera is attached to the spell effect and it's shooting across the battlefield, in a way that like it's not CGI like 3D animation that we're like fixing to make sure like it is like the smoothest thing that's ever existed. And all that makes it feel very special and very unique as well, which you're a huge part of. So thank you for that.
Thank you for shouting it out. It's a pleasure to work on it, and it's even more of a pleasure to be recognized for it. I mean, that's like, I consider myself very lucky. That's a wonderful, incredible thing that a lot of people don't get.
Yeah. I am curious, if do you play D&D? Is this like part of your world, or have you started playing since like being exposed to Becca and everyone else?
Really good question. And what's funny is I've always wondered, how long will it take for Brennan to ask me this question, because it will be a difficult conversation to have. I've played one homebrew campaign with my roommate many, many years ago, and he was actually superb game master, really good, and still makes his own campaigns and continues to play with a lot of friends. He gave me the best campaign I probably could have ever had as like a homebrew, and I enjoyed it. I did like it, but it didn't fully click for me. I was like, I am enjoying this as a good pastime, but I did not get into it as much as some of my other peers and colleagues did. And so what that actually did for me is gave me a informational, foundational understanding of how does Dungeons and Dragons, how does tabletop role playing work. And so I understand now how what do viewers watch the show for? What is Brennan thinking about when Brennan is playing? What are the players thinking about when the players are doing their thing? I now actually understand the language of D&D, but I no longer play it. But I guess it's like akin to like if a DP was hired to capture NFL, you would want to assume that the DP at least understands, why is this person throwing the football to this other guy? So it's so important, and I'm really glad that I understand Dungeons and Dragons. I do. I don't play it, and I really struggle with the improv aspect of it. Improv is not my strong suit, but boy, oh boy, do I love improv, and I can watch it all day long. And I have an enormous amount of respect for the people that can do improv. I love puzzle solving. I love escape rooms. I have an ongoing list of the amount of escape rooms I've done, and it's in like the 30s or 40s. And so I love the puzzle solving element of D&D. But yeah, I don't play very much, and I have an enormous amount of respect for the people that play it well, and create worlds for the players. I think it's incredible. It's an art form. And I'm really glad that I am able to bring that and help that reach a wider audience for people to continue to enjoy it.
Yeah. That's super cool. Does that mean, did Sam come to you for help with Escape the Green Room, or does he not know that you
He didn't
have
know.
your list built? Oh, okay.
He had no idea.
Yeah.
I was just really stoked that happened to turn out that way.
Yeah. Oh man. And then you're I mean, I guess being in Amsterdam isn't a bad way to miss the episode, but
Yeah. I mean, I had FOMO. Like, believe me,
yeah.
I was thinking about it the whole day. But yeah.
Yeah, I assume getting like the play-by-play back would be like, then they started smashing everything was probably like, oh man, that sounds fun.
It does, yeah. It's quite all right. The FOMO will always be there, and I've accepted that. That's okay.
Yeah. At least you set them up for success. And that's the important thing. And we all appreciate it because, good Lord, what an episode of television that was.
Yeah.
Kevin, thank you so much for joining me today. We are coming up on the hour. If folks at home wanted to follow along, see pictures of your shoes on the internet, where can they find you?
I don't have a strong presence, but Instagram is totally fine, and I'm very open to messages or DMs or whatever. My Instagram handle is @Kevin-Stiller. And you can email me at kevin@kevinstiller.com. I'm happy to chat. And thank you all for watching. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much, Jordan, for taking the time to help enshrine everything that Dropout is doing. We all really appreciate it. And thank you for being one of our great cheerleaders.
Thank you very much for answering DMs. I can confirm, Kevin will answer your DMs. You can. He is receptive. This was so much fun. Thank you so much. I will say I have never figured out how to end an interview, and so I just hit stop recording. So
it works. That is one way to do it.
Yeah.